There we go. All right, welcome to another lovely day of Comtech at Joshua Place High School. I am going to do this all live on the fly today. We're going to cover the basics of Photoshop, do as much as we can with regards to talking about various different assignments that we have to cover in the next little while, and hopefully just answer a ton of questions. If you are wanting to watch online, you can watch at youtube.com, obviously, duh. But if you go to jpcomtech-tech talks. If you just Google that, you should be able to find me jabbering away here, and yeah, we'll go through some stuff. If you don't have Photoshop, that is okay. There are other Photoshop equivalents, or you can just listen and try to accomplish the stuff down the road. Obviously, like I say, this is not intended for you to follow along. I'm going to go quickly and try to go efficiently through some different information so that you have the information in case we were not able to be in a scenario like this where I have access to all this technology and tools and all this kind of stuff. So, here we go. Which monitor can I put this on for comments? Let's put this here. There is lots of Photoshop equivalents that don't cost any money. I believe it's Photopia. Let's start with that. Maybe we'll start with what can you use that is not actual Photoshop? I think it's Photopia, I believe. Nope, not for, hang on, just Photopia. Oh yeah, no, this is right. Okay. If you close this, it is like the equivalent of Photoshop. It allows you to open up old PSD photos. You can do not everything that you can do in Photoshop, but it's very similar. And I don't honestly think that anything that we are going to do today is revolutionary that you wouldn't be able to accomplish on Photopia. So, if you do not have Photoshop, feel free to go to photopia.com and you can use their online interface. Obviously, it is a web-based interface, and it does not allow you, it's not like a on your computer situation. So depending on how your interface works and how you're watching me, you may or may not be able to do this at the same time as I am going through the various different parts of this assignment. But with that being said, I'm going to open up Photoshop because I have Photoshop here. You can actually see the difference. They're very similar. The overall tab, sort of tables view and everything that happens in Photoshop will be very, very similar. Before we get too crazy far along into Photoshop, one of the programs that comes along, if you have Photoshop, if you've downloaded either the trial version or if you've bought it, or if you're using associated programs, you will have to do some kind of photo organization, photo finding, photo whatever you want to call it. If you're dealing with photography, you need to organize your images in such a way that you can find them later and be able to work with those images. So, Adobe Bridge is my photo organizer tool of choice. Another tool that a lot of people love and comes highly, highly recommended is Adobe Lightroom. There is an Adobe Lightroom version, if I'm not mistaken, for your cell phones. There's a version of Photoshop for your cell phone that you can download if you have an account with Adobe Creative Cloud as well. They actually even, I think one of my senior level students has an iPad version of it and stuff, but like I say, if you simply Google alternatives to Adobe or alternatives to Photoshop, there is a number of different programs that come up. Not all of them are free, but some of them are free, and you can certainly find some alternatives that will give you similar, if not the same, user outcomes. One of the benefits of being in class, obviously, is that you have access to all these programs. They're professional level programs. They tend to cost a lot of money if you are in the industry, which is also one of the reasons why people are trying to go away from Adobe, but I don't think there's any other group of programs that work as seamlessly together as Adobe does. And I'm not saying that Adobe is working super hard to push the limits. They actually tend to be the kind of company that steals ideas and amalgamates them into themselves, but they are so big right now, and they are definitely the industry standard when it comes to video production, like photography production for sure, graphic design, everything is Adobe. It's top notch, and they have great software, and people complain about it all the time, but sorry, this is just the industry standard. So I can't do any. I cannot do anything about that. I can only teach what I know. When I am working in Adobe Creative Cloud, hang on a second, let me get some pictures to work with. Great live streaming here. As I walk away from the camera while trying to live stream. The simple fact is that Adobe Bridge works seamlessly with not only Photoshop, but also with some of the other programs within the Adobe suite of programs. So you can work seamlessly with InDesign, you can work seamlessly with Illustrator, you can work seamlessly across them, you can work into Premiere, you can take your images that you've created in Illustrator or in Photoshop, bring them into Adobe Premiere and animate them, or bring them into After Effects and animate them in different ways. Obviously, that's why we're doing this stuff now, because if we all go home, not everyone will have it, and we'll have to come up with another solution. So, anyways, if I'm going to move this over here. If I was going to go through and edit some photos and stuff, I would obviously have the ability to do that in Adobe Bridge. So this program, not to repeat too much, that's in the first video that I posted online with the assignment, allows you to search through your different folders. You can make favorites. So if I wanted to have quick access to my D-Write folder, I could bring that into my favorites, and I would have access to that very quickly through this quick drop-down kind of menu. I don't know what it is doing right now, but that's okay. If I had different photos, this hard drive has been disconnected. So if I went into this computer, our red hard drive, this is from last year's, or a couple years actually, ago's yearbook stuff. So if I had yearbook photos that I was trying to sort through, these ones were ones that were not needed. They were needing to be, emptied that folder up. There we go. This is all video footage. The nice thing about Adobe Bridge is it also works with video footage as well as non-video footage. So, as you can see, I can search through numerous different photos. I can actually give them, if I was going to go through a set of photos and give them some rankings and stuff, I could literally go through, where's a good one? If I was going to go through this batch of photos, I would be able to go through this batch of photos and very quickly, using my arrow keys or my mouse, I could toggle through these images. I'd be able to not only see the image, I can change these panels to be different sizes. If I don't care so much what the image is, I can shrink it down, and I have all this metadata that's associated with every single image that you ever will take. With a camera these days, all has data that comes with it. It even tells you the body serial number of the Canon camera that it was taken with, and all of this stuff is embedded into the photos and can be tracked and traced, and there's people that make a really good living doing data analysis, and that's one of the things they can search through, is finding like photos that have been altered and changed. And you can go in here, you can add in all kinds of different names and numbers and tracking numbers and all kinds of crazy stuff. But you also have the ability to go back and check out, oh, it told me that the aperture that I used that day, the focal length was a 24 millimeters, the resolution, all kinds of different stuff. This photo was taken like well over a year ago. in terms of the date created was the 3rd. Now, some of this date created stuff is when you copied it to the computer, and depending on if the date in your camera was accurate or not, it may or may not have been accurate. And so some of these dates are not necessarily 100% true, but fairly relative in terms of what's going on. It gives you an idea at least. It says the original time that it was created. Now again, this is time based on the camera, and so my guess is this picture was not taken, what time is this? 7:06 a.m. Yeah, open house was not at 7:06 a.m. So either whatever computer or the camera settings were set to that for the internal camera, or the internal clock was set at a funny time. But generally, it would sort of know it was on the 3rd. The 3rd was the right day of the year that the open house took place. So, anyways, Adobe Bridge allows you to go through a whole bunch of different stuff with regards to that. Where did my meeting people go here? So, it also allows me to rank my photos. So as I'm going through here, if I like this photo, I can either click on this star system, or I can do the shortcut is just using the control key and then numbers 1 to 5. I would be able to rank photos. Say I rank these all as 5s. This is a 5, maybe a 5, right? I would go through my whole folder of files, give them all a ranking. I would then be able to, as I create the different rankings, I would be able to see here on the left-hand side that I have 61 photos that have no rank, 5 photos that do have a rank. If I selected this, it would now show me only those 5 photos. I can search by keywords. Again, in this keywords tab, I can add different kinds of specifications to the photos. I can add my own stuff into the metadata to search for specific photos. So if I'm looking for flower photos, I can just type in the search bar flowers, and it'll bring up all the different photos that I have in my catalog that have flowers. I will admit that Adobe Lightroom does this like night and day better. But Adobe Lightroom is based on the premise that you are a photographer, whether you're professional or amateur, you always work on the same computer at the same general location. It's your laptop, it's maybe your PC, you have a hard drive that's yours. Lightroom does not like, at least from what I understand and what I've seen, it's not a happy camper with our school network because of the fact that your F drive is set up in such a way that it moves around a lot. You can change computers, it follows with you. There's a bunch of different crazy stuff that it's not ideal in our school's scenario for using Adobe Lightroom. That doesn't mean that it's not an amazing piece of software. It just means that I've avoided using it because the way that it sets up the libraries and the way that it sets itself up, it's not as friendly with a network that potentially you could change computers and all of a sudden things go weird and you start to lose files, or you log in one day and it's in one place, you log in another day, it's in a different place. That's not conducive. Lightroom is designed for professionals who are using their own computer at their own studio, and the hard drives never change, the network never changes, it's all the same. So, amazing piece of software, works really well in a professional scenario, doesn't work so well in a school scenario. But Adobe Bridge works great in a school scenario because it allows you most, if not all, of the same features. The only thing it doesn't allow you to do is edit the photos within Adobe Bridge. You do that in Photoshop. But hey, we have Photoshop, so who cares? I have a bunch of photos that I have pulled up from before. So if you haven't already, if you're not in the school, ignore this next couple minutes worth of stuff. If you are in the school, I mean, even if you're at home, this is a good practice to take part in. This F drive that we have, if you go to this PC, if you haven't done so already, you can get into your favorites. You can also do it from the very top bar of content here. Even if this panel is closed, you can still get into your desktop, and you can get into the different root areas. So you would go from desktop to this PC, and then you would find your F drive. So it should be your first initial last name should be a drive, and I call it the F drive because the final in brackets is usually an F. That F drive will populate, and for you guys, probably will have very limited to anything in it at all. But you want to make sure that you have some kind of a ComTech folder or a way to store your data so that it doesn't go missing in the event of some issues. I would also highly recommend, given the scenario and the world that we live in right now, that periodically you take some of your projects and you dump them to your Google Drive account. We can't access our Google Drive account from Adobe. You have to make the copy manually, but regardless, it's not a hard thing to do, and I can certainly show you if that needs to be done. I have already, from semester 1, I have this COVID folder, which has some different photos in it that we used to work with, just some stock photos that I found. Any one of the photos that you have in your Adobe Bridge, if you were to double click on them, they would automatically open in Adobe Photoshop. They work pretty much seamlessly together. You can do various different kinds of photos in here, depending on what stuff you're working on, depending on what different projects you're working on. It will load up all your different photos, and you can, let's see if there's a good one I can work with here. Did I do any panoramas? No, not really. Not in that folder. No. Okay, so with regards to our Photoshop basics, essentially this is what we are trying to create. This is the finished. This in like a month, like it would have been a month from now, but we're gonna work towards this a little quicker than we would have. We're gonna cover InDesign right away, so that it's kind of out of the way, so to speak, and that we can say that we've actually gone through it. But we first need to edit these photos so they're ready to be placed onto this initial document. So I guess I should change the description. It's the basics of Photoshop and InDesign all in one big crazy shot. Here we go. So with regards to Photoshop, this is what we're going to create. Our very first document is going to be something really, really simple like this. So the first thing we got to do is obviously get into Photoshop. If you are in Photoshop and it looks like this, there's a couple different things. You can obviously create a new document. It has this beautiful huge button for create new. One of the things that Adobe has added to their stuff, and people like love to complain about the price of Photoshop and Adobe products, but there's almost no other program out there that has as many resources, has as many content creators making content for the program as Adobe. And so there is they actually have started to like put in tutorial stuff like right in the actual program, like it's like embedded into the program, which is, I mean, I don't know, some people would argue that it makes the program bloated and hard to load and whatever else. I tend to think that, you know what, if they're teaching you the program within the program, how could that be a bad thing? So anyways, they've started to do way more of that kind of stuff. But regardless, we would go create new. If you didn't want to go from there, you can just hit this little Photoshop button and it'll kind of go into the general tab interface. This is the general layout. This is the part that looks very similar to if you were in Photopia, right? This looks very, very similar to Adobe Photoshop. It's obviously not exactly the same, but it's similar. You have, again, in this corner here, that, oh wait a minute, I'm in the way of that corner. I'm going to go away for a second. In the corner here, you have the this Learn tab. If this is the first time you are loading up your Photoshop, there's a really good chance that it will load up looking something more like this, where you have these fundamental skills and stuff popping up right away. It gives you like full-on like projects to work through, like different kinds of ways to, like, it's amazing how much stuff they've embedded right into the program for you from a learning standpoint. I tend to tell people just to minimize this or get rid of it, get it out of your way. So you can just click the little tiny arrows at the corner and that will collapse any one of these panels. If you wanted to, you could even collapse this one, but we use this middle panel a ton. I honestly have to say, after as many years as I've worked in Photoshop, I've never really gotten out of the Essentials workspace. I do very limited, if any, 3D work. I do limited motion work. I do almost no web design within Photoshop. I have a WordPress account, so that's what we use for video. And if I put myself in the bottom, it's just as bad. Hang on, I gotta find a place that I could hang out in. I'll just turn it off for now. The overall layout of Photoshop, it can seem daunting at first when you've never seen it before. And I'm not saying that it's a program that you're going to learn overnight or be like incredibly comfortable with in a short time frame. It definitely takes its time to work through things, and or it'll take you time to work through things. And I encourage you to take your time and work through them as best as you possibly can. But it's not an overnight thing. It never will be. So do your best that you can, and we'll try to kind of go from there. So. The normal way to create a new file, if you've already kind of opened Photoshop and you're not at that main menu, if you're not at this like home screen thing, you would just go File, New, and create a new document. Now, again, some of these things will look a little different on yours, because if it's the first time that you're going through it, you don't have recent items, you don't have custom items that you've saved, you have nothing. So we're going to start in the print section of our panel here, and that gives you a few predefined things. Obviously, the cool thing is it has a bunch of, like, you could do like a live music flyer. If anyone, this looks very familiar to like the Get to Know Me thing that I sent out earlier in the year. Oh, no, wait, did I? No, this would have been for parent-teacher interviews. I haven't sent this out. I should send this out to you guys. Anyways, I made this up. I could open it up, actually. I used this tutorial, or this little template. Let's see if I have it in here. Can I find it on short notice? Where would I have saved it, Mr. Wright? Here it is. This was like a template thing that they had attached. So I just reconfigured it, changed a bunch of the layers and stuff to have my information in it, and a little teacher bio and stuff that I was able to send out. So I'll attach that in Google Classroom someplace, and you guys can see it later. But anyways, if you're creating a new document, generally, if you've never created a document like it before, so if you've already created a TV, HD format thing, well, you can just click on that and away you go. Or if you've already created a 8.5 by 11 is a standard piece of paper from the printer. If you've already created a piece of paper document, well, then it's a no-brainer. You just would use the exact same document you've already created before, and you'd go from there. If you're creating it from scratch, though, and you've never done one, like you haven't done one yet or whatever, you can either give it a name for, like, if you want to name the preset. In this case, I don't care, we don't need to. Sometimes that actually crashes the computer, again, for that network weird incompatibility thing. But so don't type in here, or don't do anything there. But with regards to your size of your document, you want it to be 11 inches wide and 8.5 high. So essentially we're creating a landscape orientation piece of paper. 300 pixels per inch, so just talking a little bit about pixels per inch and that kind of concept of resolution and stuff. 72, if I had the resolution in here of 72, this would be considered sort of standard TV web-based resolution. 300 is the minimum or the standard print-based resolution. So if a company or if somebody is doing a print, anything that's going to be printed with a printing press or through a printing company, they will ask you to have it in a minimum of 300, what they would call DPI, or dots per inch, which is essentially the same as pixels per inch. So you need to have a resolution of 300 pixels per inch at the minimum. You can obviously go higher than that, and what it does is it changes the pixel density as to how many pixels are in each inch of your document. It can make the file size like insanely huge, but it also can make your design really, really detailed, and if you needed to scale it, you would have a little bit more flexibility the higher pixels per inch you have versus something that's only 72 or 50 or 12. It's going to pixelate really fast and get really blurry really fast. So just keeping that in mind, 300 DPI is the one we usually standard go for. And I would highly recommend, if it's a print-based item, which most of the stuff we're going to be doing would be considered in a printing world or in a photography world. So 300 DPI or pixels per inch is the best way to go with that. Obviously, like this, you could go pixels per centimeter. If you look, it auto converts it for you. So pixels per inch, an inch is obviously bigger than a centimeter. It's roughly 3 times, not quite the size. So 118.11 pixels per centimeter, if we really wanted to get technical for Canada, but most of the printing industry is still in inches, because most of it comes from the US. So being that they use inches and feet, and same with construction uses inches and feet, we would do the same in graphic design here. In terms of our color mode, because we are using Photoshop, and because we are kind of considering this to be more of a web-based scenario, we're going to stay in RGB color. CMYK color would be what would be considered the print standard, though. If I knew for sure that this was going to be printed in vast quantities to a printing press company, I would use CMYK color as my document colors. Things just work a little different in those other colors. Obviously, grayscale is grayscale. No matter what color you choose, it still shows up as gray. Bitmap, I really haven't gotten into that. I actually have absolutely no idea why you'd ever use bitmap color. And same with lab color. I know there's a specific reason, but it's a very obscure reason, and it has something to do with like video color grading and things like that. So, but we're not doing that. We're not doing video. We're just doing photo right now. So we're going to leave it with RGB color. We're going to leave it in 8-bit. You could go as high as 32-bit. It just, again, gives you like a bunch of different quality options and stuff. The standard is 8-bit for now, though. And our background is going to stay as a white background. You could do a transparent background. You could give it a color. We're just going to stick with white for now. In the advanced options, which I'm just going to show you, is these color profiles and stuff. When I first started learning about printing and all these different kinds of things, they didn't have like 42 different color profiles. They had way more select number. If you specifically knew what you're going to put it on, so like if it's going on a Canon if it's going to be added to Canon footage, and you wanted C-Log 2 or C-Log 3 or whatever, if you're doing something with a video or different kinds of, specifically different kinds of printers and cameras, a lot of the print settings, like if you have a Kodak 5205 at home, you can set up your color modes to work in the same profile, and then any colors you see on your screen are going to be a little more accurate to the colors you might see when you actually print it off. Again, there's so many variables, it's still a little bit of a guess and check. You never know for sure how it's going to look, but regardless, that's how it goes. When it comes to creating here, we're just going to hit create. This is going to pop us open a new document, and here we go with our new document. So again, just for a little quick refresh, this is what we're going to create. So we are going to create a gradient background with some boxes and some text. So by default here, we pop up. Working through the interface of Photoshop, I know I covered this in the other video, but if you hover over top of any one of the tools, they will give you like a little bit of an indication or a name of what they are. Some of the new stuff that they've added into the newer versions of Photoshop is these kind of animated GIF scenarios where it's like move tool. This is what it's going to do. It's going to move a picture around. Rectangular marquee is for selecting rectangles, and it shows you like kind of a little animation of how the different tools work. Some of these crazy ones in the 2020 version, this object selection tool and stuff is some sort of weird voodoo magic. You usually click on something and it automatically selects the whole item for you. So it's some pretty cool stuff. But anyways, we want to make a background. So by default, Photoshop opens and it only has one layer, and it's a locked layer. If you can't see your layer panels, if you can't see all this stuff, so say this is closed or adjusted down or whatever, the first thing I always tell people is to go to your window, go to workspace, and then just say reset essentials, and make sure that you have essentials selected. It'll just put it back to the factory default, and then you're able to, again, if you want, you can close this library tool to move it out of the way. So you should see that you have a background image with essentially nothing on it, and it is a locked layer. Whether it's locked or not, for this assignment doesn't make any difference. Down the road, if you wanted to make it transparent, though, you would have to unlock this layer, and then you could throw this layer in the trash. Actually, you can't throw it in the trash until you have another layer. You can't have no layers. You can't have a document that has no layers. But regardless, by default, when you create a new layer, it becomes a transparent layer. So if you wanted to fill this layer with a solid color, so maybe I want to make this completely white, I would use my paint bucket tool, just like paint, and I would select a color down here with my color selector. So this top color is my foreground color, the bottom one is my background color. Whatever my foreground color is whatever this paint bucket tool will paint with. So I want it to be white, so I'm going to use this little set of arrows to switch between the two, select it to be white, and change my background to completely white. The little gradient that I created here that gave us a white to black gradient was basically, there's two ways to do it. One is to create a new layer, so we're going to create a new layer. This new layer could then be painted completely black, and then we can create a what's called a mask. So same as you would if you were, well, wearing a mask like I am right now. You can't see my mouth, you can't see my nose. I know it's there, I can feel it, but it's covered up with the mask. I can see my eyes, and I have this lovely black rimmed set of glasses around it. Well, a mask in Photoshop essentially works the same way. You can cover or reveal different pieces of your document using a mask. So in this case, we want to reveal some of the white that's on here. So if I just create a mask by using the mask tool or the quick mask tool at the bottom here, this allows us to simply, with whatever layer is selected, we can select this and it creates a mask. So it creates this little box beside the box. Oh, hang on a second, I gotta go back here. My apologies, I'll step back a step here. So we have our black layer, our white layer. We want to create a mask over top of that using this tool at the bottom that is just the quick mask tool. Add a vector mask, right? This mask, I can now, essentially right now, it's a fully white mask, and it's showing everything. There's actually nothing there. So until I start to paint with black, nothing is going to show up. If I had, before I created this mask, if I had my colors reversed and my color palette was white on top and black on the bottom, and I created the mask, it really does nothing different, right? Like it actually doesn't matter what's going on with your document. You're not going to mess, you can't just like accidentally screw this up. So when you create your mask, you still will have to tell the computer, okay, wait a minute, now I go into this black and white scenario, and what am I doing? Well, if I have a paint bucket, and I paint this entire mask, if you notice it's selected with these little white handles around the outside of it. If I paint bucketed that mask, the whole thing would turn black and all of my black would disappear because I've essentially just whited out the entire mask. Like I've just thrown it all away. So I show exactly everything that's underneath. Control Z on the keyboard goes back one step. If I take the paintbrush tool and I was to paint on this mask layer, it's now poking holes in the mask, revealing the white background that is underneath. Okay? The gradient tool here, so if I use the gradient tool, and if I'm using the, if you notice, I'm just the standard default is this gradient that comes up. If I draw with the gradient tool across my design, if you notice, it has drawn the inverse. It's actually drawn a black bar, like solid black at the top, and fading out to white as I went down the document, which masks out that portion of the document. Okay? The reverse of this, or the other way to do this exact same operation, is simply just to have a layer and to paint a gradient onto said layer, right? So now I've painted, it goes from white to black, and it's in its own layer, and it's on top of the white layer. So they're not interacting with each other. So depending on the effect that you want, you're going to do it as a mask, or you're going to do it as a straight up layer. I don't care how you do it. This is part of Photoshop. The joys of Photoshop is that there's about 42 different ways to do like everything in Photoshop. So it makes no difference to me how you get to the end step. I just need you to have created a gradient that flows across the screen. If you went and started at the bottom and went to the top, it would reverse itself, so it has white. It always is white where you start and black where you end. Okay? And that's because of the way that this gradient is set up. You can go into here, there's other gradients. I could make a blue one if I wanted to. Right? That is not what I want though. I want it to be gray for now. Right? So start at the top, it's white. At the bottom is black, and in between is shades of gray. Okay. Next step is text. Right? How do you do text in Photoshop? Pretty straightforward. You find the text tool. Okay. Lots of people complain about the text tool in Photoshop. I'm not exactly sure why. A lot of people hate the fact that, like, if you click and drag, it will create a text box and it fills it with Lorem Ipsum font. You can then select the font size you want. Maybe I only want 30-point font. Maybe I want 60-point font. Maybe I want 10. Whatever it is. I'm not so sure why people kind of get all bent out of shape about, bent out of shape about the text tool in Photoshop. They don't like the fact that when you click it, it shows up with some text and you have to change the text, and sometimes you got to move it because it doesn't fit on the screen, or I don't know. People complain about a lot of weird things in life these days, and I don't think the text tool in Photoshop is one to, it's not a hill to die on, but regardless, it shows up with text. You can select, before you ever start even typing, you can select the size. Maybe I want it to be like 300 or 250 or whatever. I can make it like giant sized. I could also, which happens a lot when I am designing things, I don't know if this is just me or what, but oftentimes when I'm designing something, so in this case, we want this to say Comtech is fun, right? So I'm going to type in here, Comtech is fun. Okay? And maybe I want it to be more grammatically correct, so I would just use my text tool, and I can type, I can click and type anywhere, just like any word program or any typing program that you've ever used. What is not like any other typing program we use is, this is the edge of the page, this is the edge of the page. But in Photoshop, if I select this text and I make this font super big, it just goes off the edge of the page. It just is what it is. You don't see the stuff that's outside of the boxes. And sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to undo that. So that's why they have tricks like if you double click on the text layer here, this T, it will automatically select all of the text within that text layer, whether you can see it or not. and then you'd be able to fix the font back to a size that's something you can actually see. Another way to change text or to manipulate it, because it is a form of vector in Photoshop, I'm going to make hit enter here, so this becomes 2 lines instead of only 1 line. The other way to manipulate it is to use the move tool, right? So I can take this move tool and I can do a Control T, and I can actually transform this text. And so instead of being that size, I can scale it up. I could make it smaller, bigger. If I wanted to kind of squish it, I could hold the Control key on the keyboard, and I could like bend it. I could do a bunch of different things. Or if I wanted to shrink it, I can hold the Shift key, and I'd be able to squish the text. Obviously, doing that kind of stuff, you're distorting the proportion of the font or the proportion of the text. So you need to watch that that's what you're planning to do, that that's part of your design ideas, if you will. Also, if you look here at the example, this Comtech is fun, is super spreaded out. It's spreaded, I don't know if it's a word, but it's not tight together like this stuff would be. When I, again, if I select the text tool, which is the same as if you just hit the T, if you're not in the layer, don't type T when you're in a text layer, but if you have no layer selected and if you hit the T on your keyboard, it will automatically select the text tool for you, and then you can click whatever you want in that area. Or if you want to select it all, again, you double click on the T in your layer panel, and you've got that whole batch of text selected. The distance between letters and the distance between lines of text is what we would call the kerning and the leading. So that's kind of a term that it's covered somewhat in typography, and it's that concept of giving you space between lines and between words, right? So if I hold the Alt key on my keyboard, I should almost, here, I wonder if I could do this. If I put this up, you can, the Alt key on your keyboard, I'm going to, hang on, you can't see my hand. There you go. Oh, my microphone's in the way now. There we go. The Alt key on my keyboard, I need to push that down at the same time as I am holding my, as I am changing the arrow keys on my keyboard. So I hold the Alt key, and when I go right with my arrows, assuming I'm in Photoshop, Alt and the right arrow will spread out the words. Alt, left arrow will take the text characters and make them really tight together. So depending on the design, depending on what you want, you can make things spread out, you can make things narrower. You can also change the line spacing. So Alt again and the up or down keys will actually bring the spacing of the lines down or bring the spacing of the lines up. So depending on what you're doing, you can use those kind of cool little shortcut techniques. Also at the top here is your font, of course. So I'm going to change it to that same kind of like army font kind of thing. What was that called again? As you can see, you can scroll through all the font, and when you hover over the samples, they adapt natively to your to the type of stuff you're doing. Where am I going? It was, no, I cannot remember what I did with it, so we're going to do it this way. So if you can't find a font, sometimes what's handy is I just click at the top in the font box, and then I can use the arrows to select down through the different types of font. So I'm just using, I can flip back to this other camera again quickly. Okay, I wonder if I could like, what does this look like if I put it on top of my mic? This might block my microphone just a little bit. This should be like a camera that's like above me. Put on my head here. Bird's not on. You don't want to see my head. Be like a neck cam. Call it the keyboard camera. I don't think it likes being on my shirt. It's not focusing. Wrecked it. It's all blurry. I've killed it. It doesn't want to focus anymore. I'll just put it back where it was. Okay. Anyways. I did all of that just to say you could use the arrow keys right here. So I can use the arrow keys to transfer up and down through my font categories if I want to just quickly search through all the different types of font and what they're going to look like as I go, and eventually I will find the one that I am looking for. Or possibly I'll find it at some point. Right? So, super handy, easy way to find what stuff looks like in your design and just kind of search through the different fonts to see what they do, see what kind of options you can come up with. Oh, there it was. There it is. Stencil. Go figure. That's a good name for a font like this. It is a stencil. So, I've picked my font. It's now falling off of the page. I can do one of two things. I can use the Control key, Control T, and I can go back here and I can just scale it by hand to the size that would actually fit onto the screen size, or I could double click the text, select it, and I could actually change the font manually. So maybe I change the font to be like 140, right? Although 140 still doesn't quite fit. So again, double click, 125. And then now I fit on the page nicely. Now, obviously white on white is not an ideal color scenario. It is certainly not easy to read. So you can go in and change your font color to be something completely different. Again, double click on it. I can take my font. I'll change it to black in this case, so that now I get Comtech is fun. Did I put an exclamation mark? I did. Look at that. How do I know myself? Exclamation. Okay, so font, really easy to deal with. Gradient, reasonably easy to deal with. Any kind of layer, if I wanted to have other colors in here, if I wanted to do other crazy stuff, if I added a layer, wherever you are selected when you hit the new layer button at the bottom here, it will automatically jump up and do it above. If I don't like a layer, I can throw it out. If I want to add layer functions and different things to layers, there's a bunch of different sort of functions down here hidden in this little box. One guy was complaining on a video that I watched about Photoshop. He was like, the threshold is hard to find, and I was like, you're an idiot. It's like right there. Like it couldn't get any closer to what you're doing. But anyways, it was kind of a funny video. I was like, I don't understand why you're getting so mad about Photoshop and stuff, but um, and he just couldn't understand anything that was there. So, anyways, I'm not even sure why he wanted to use the threshold, but whatever. You can also apply different effects to your stuff. So if I go to the effects panel here, or add layer style, it has a bunch of predefined ones that are all sort of ready to go. I could go into color overlay if I chose to, depending on what layer I have selected. In this case, I want to keep it black, so I would just keep it black. But I could change this literally to any color that I wanted with the color picker, and it would change that entire layer, whatever was in that layer, to a specific color. And then you could even play with the opacity of that color. You can go in here into the gradient mode. You can do you could pick a different kind of gradient. You could apply that gradient over top of your text and stuff with different weird functions, if you will. Let's see here. Can I do this? I think because I have color overlay, it goes over top of it. Yeah, there we go. If I turn color overlay off, I could do a gradient overlay. I can change a whole bunch of different colors, settings, features, and fun, all within there. Yes. I'm just recording the video, but yeah.
I can ask you a question?
Oh yeah, I can mute it for a moment. Hey everybody, sorry about that, that was weird. My department head was asking questions about, they're trying to do an awards night, kind of an online YouTube awards night thing for the grade 12s who missed the opportunity to get awarded their big fancy awards from from last year's stuff that all went to pot in spring. Everything was messed up there, so they didn't get a chance to have their awards night and be seen. So we're trying to come up with an online virtual awards night. So anyways, I am going to wiggle this around again so I know where to cut for when I'm editing my video, and we'll start from where I left off. So anyways, there's lots of different features and things in Photoshop that you can use. You can add like a million different, like literally there's a million different things and combinations of stuff you can do, which when you guys get into some of the Photoshop videos and assignments and stuff in the coming days, you'll see some of the amazing things that can be done using some of those features. Anyways, to finish this off, we're just going to turn this back off again. So we want black text. And then boxes. Now, how do we make some boxes? A few different ways. I will sort of preface this by saying that Photoshop is not a text layout program. And so creating boxes is you're creating bitmap boxes. They have a vector type property when they're in Photoshop, which means that you can scale them multiple times. Once you save them, they are the size they are, and you're kind of stuck with that. A few different ways to make a box. Obviously, you can take the rectangle tool, and you can create a box. If you hold the Shift key, you will then create a square box versus like a free transform random sized box. Hold Shift, you get a box that is square. When you let go, it will automatically fill with whatever your foreground color is. So in this case, it fills as a white box. In my example, if you notice, it is like transparent. You can go into the properties of your box. So if I take my move tool, I've selected this box, I can move it around, I can have it right here where I want it. I can go into the properties panel that should auto pop up. As soon as you draw a shape and select it, this properties panel should pop up on the right hand side. I think I'm kind of in the way a little bit of it. This properties panel will pop up. I'm going to move this down and move this down just a pinch, and then I'll come back. This properties panel, you can make all kinds of adjustments. So this is the color of the box. So if I go in here, I can change the color to anything I want. I can make it a red box if I want it. But I also can make it transparent again. So I can click here, make this transparent. Now it looks like I've deleted the box, but I haven't. It's just not, it has no color. So there's a transparency to it. But this next set over is the stroke of the box. So this is the outside color of the box. So if I make this to be black, now I get this outside little box showing up. And I want to make this a lot thicker, so I'm going to go, say, 20, let's say 25 for a nice round number. So 25 pixels gives me a decent sized square box with a thick enough line that I can actually grab it and move it around. And it's important to be able to grab it and move it, because look, if I don't grab the right thing, now I'm moving the background, which can get a little annoying. So I don't want to move the background all over the place. I only want to move this little box. So one way to stop from accidentally grabbing the background is to lock the background. So if I go to the background layer and I simply click the lock tool here, so it looks like a little icon of a lock, right? It will lock this layer in place so that I can't move it anymore. Now I can't grab it and pull it. I can make selections, but I can't move it around. So now it just makes it a little easier when I'm trying to grab this box and move it, that we don't have any issues. Now it's labeled the aptly named rectangle 1. But what if I wanted more of these rectangles? What if I say, for example, wanted 4 of them evenly spaced along my image? Well, a couple different ways I could do that. One is I could right click on here and I could say that I would like to duplicate the layer, which then brings up another panel and asks what I'd like to do for the name. And then I could say okay. And then it's duplicated the layer, but it doesn't look like it's done anything because one layer is on top of the other. So I still have to move it, and it becomes a little bit clumsy and a little bit confusing. So, going back one step, or a couple steps, the faster, and I find far easier way to duplicate something or to make a copy of something is you select whatever the item it is that you want to make a copy of. You hold the Alt key on the keyboard, and if you notice when I hold the Alt key, I now get this double kind of arrow cursor showing up. I can click and drag across, and I make my copy. I can Alt, click and drag again, make another copy. I can Alt, click and drag it. Whoops. Alt, click and drag again, and make another copy. Okay? So I can very easily make these 4 copies, no problems. Everything looks good. But what if I want to move all 4 of them? Because they're not really centered on the page. Well, the nice thing is I can just click the first layer here, hold Shift, select the last one, and now all 4 of them, oops, if you actually clicked on the item lister, right? Top one, bottom one, click on one of them, and now you can move the 4 of them as a batch. And if you look in Photoshop, it has some kind of helpful, like, hey, you're in the middle. This is a little warning that pops up, this pink little line saying you're in the middle of the page, would you like to leave it here in the middle? And I say yes, so I let go, and there we have it. ComTech is fun with some little boxes. Very, very straightforward project, very, very simple. Just kind of getting the basics going. The way you would finish this off is you would go File, Save As, and you're going to save it. I tell everybody in my classes to always save things twice. And you might say, what on earth, why would you save it twice? The reason you save everything twice is because you first want to save it as a Photoshop document. So I want to save this as image 1. Okay. And when I save it as image 1, it gives me this format compatibility thing. I just say, okay, yeah, we're good to go. By saving it as a Photoshop document or as a PSD, I can go back 3 months from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, theoretically, if Photoshop still exists in 10 years, and I would be able to open the project and continue to edit with it. When I want to save something and post it to School Zone, or to send to a friend who doesn't have Photoshop that I just want them to see the finished work, the smaller and easier way to send something is either as a PDF or as a JPEG. So I am going to do Save As again for the second time, and this time instead of the save type, I am going to pick JPEG. That's the smallest, most compressed format. If I saved this as an Adobe PDF, that would also work really well. And the nice thing with the newer versions of the PDF is you can actually open the PDF again and edit it and change it and stuff. But for what we want to just do JPEG because it's small, it's an easy format to work with. Again, the name stays the same because we already saved it as a PSD, so it stays saved as a it still saves as image 1, but now the extension has changed to JPEG. You cannot just type in here .jpg. That doesn't work. You actually have to select the type as JPEG. Okay? Once you've saved it as a JPEG, you hit save. This says, oh, it already exists. Oh, wait, it already exists. So do I want to replace it? In this case, I'm going to replace it because I actually like the new one that I did better than the old one I did. But if you guys were doing a document, this would be a great warning to say, oh, wait a minute, no, I actually want this to be like image 01 instead of image 1. Whatever it is that you're wanting to save so that it doesn't overwrite the finished copy. And then it gives you this little final kind of pop-up that pops up, just asking some format questions. I always have the JPEG slider slid all the way to the top, so I'm getting the best quality possible. I hit OK, and away we go. So that's my version of the basics of Photoshop. From here, I'm going to leave it at that because the other tutorials that I've already posted kind of go through the different stuff that's online already. It just so happens that I use different images than is what's in the tutorial. I will post the same images that I used on the Google Sheets or the Google slideshow. I will post the same images to Google Classroom so that you have them available. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm also going to post all the assignments that relate to the graphic design portion of the course. So all the InDesign work and all of the Photoshop projects and stuff, I will post those onto Google Classroom so that you have access to all of the upcoming assignments. And we will put photography, if you will, on hold for a little while because we can come back to photography and do the photos down the road, and then we'll just, some of the projects in the graphic design sections have a bunch of boxes that you create, and if you don't have those images, it's totally okay. We'll just leave the boxes, and I can mark the boxes as one assignment, and then if we have the ability to put the pictures into the boxes, great, bonus. If we don't, it's not a big deal. You would just hand in the individual pictures separate. So I think I agree with everybody that it's safer for us to wait with photography, do that down the road, and have our time spent doing the graphic design work and things while we still have access to all the computers and the software and everything else associated with that. So I'll throw it open for questions. I know there's nobody watching me on my live stream, which is fine. I didn't expect that. It's a long, boring live stream that I'm going to have to edit anyways and probably repost again because that big giant gap in the middle is lame when it comes to live streaming. But regardless, does anyone have any questions either in-house here or online with regards to sort of just general Q&A with regards to Photoshop, stuff that I can help out with, questions that there might be, and then if not, I will let you work and I will start posting a bunch of things up to Google Classroom. Does anybody have a question in-house here? Anybody online have any questions at all? Nothing? Well then, apparently I'm good at my job. Okay. Thank you, Nazar. I love the vote of confidence. I like to feel like I did something productive today. Nobody has any questions in-house here, you guys? Everybody's good? All right. Have fun, you guys. Email me if you have questions. I will just start posting a bunch of different assignments up, and I'm going to make some guesses for due dates and stuff, which I'm not as concerned about that as I am about just getting you the content so you can start to work on it and ask me as many questions as possible before something crazy happens. So, okay, thank you guys. I will sign off now. Well, not sign off, but I'm going to stop live streaming. And then if you need to, you can go back and watch my video. It'll be posted there until I repost it with an edited version that is better. So that is Mr. Wright, JP, signing off. Hope you have a great day.